So in these little videos, I'm talking about the principles of Pilates, the mat work principles, which are principles for all of Pilates, though it's not just on the mat, it's also on the equipment as well. And for me, the second principle, it's very close to being the first principle as well for me, is breathing. Obviously very important, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But with the breathing, whenever I'm the first thing I would ever do in a class is to focus on the breath. First thing I do, before we do anything else, is to work on being aware of the breathing. Because so many of us, obviously breathing is an unconscious thing, because you haven't got time to think about thousands of breaths that you take a day. So when you're breathing, I notice that many people, when they breathe in, they pull their belly in, and then they tend to breathe from their shoulders, rather than breathing in and allowing the belly to expand on that inhalation. It can seem very odd to do that, to change that way of thinking. And it's very common, when I'm working with a one-to-one client, it's very common to see the breath being completely incorrect and very tight around here, around the diaphragm, a lot of bracing going on, a lot of pulling in, and very shallow breathing as well, which can mean the diaphragm can be overworking, and the abdominal muscles like the transverse abdominis, but even the pelvic floor, the obliques, can be underworking. So the transverse abdominis can be inhibited by the diaphragm. But they also get the neck muscles if they're working too much as well from the breathing up here. The smaller neck muscles are they don't have the power and the strength to be able to lift the whole rib cage. So they get very tired and very sore. So if you've got neck pain and shoulder pain, it could be that your breathing maybe needs to be looked at. So focusing on the breath is very important during the Pilates sessions. There's a certain time when you breathe in, a certain time when you breathe out, and that can change. The rhythm of that can change as you go into the intermediate and the advanced sessions. So when the more you practice it and the more you're aware, you can actually change the breath in the exercises as well to challenge yourself. But notice that you're not holding the breath is the most important thing. No holding of the breath. So that ties into the first principle of awareness, of being aware of your breath as you move. So the breath isn't being held, you don't create tightness around here, because the diaphragm can also inhibit the multifidus in the lower back. So if you have back pain, it could be that you're holding your breath when you're doing certain exercises in Pilates, or even from day-to-day things when you're focusing and concentrating. I notice when I'm reading, and I tend to make notes of things that I'm reading about, I tend to hold my breath when I'm doing that. So noticing little things like that from day-to-day stuff, just everyday stuff that you go around and do. Are you holding your breath? How are you breathing? Are you a mouth breather or are you a nose breather? Can you notice your exhalation being longer than your inhalation? Little things like that will help you breathe more into the diaphragm and less being a chest breather or being a belly breather. You don't want to be just a chest breather or just a belly breather. You want to be able to have both moving at the same time. So the diaphragm opens out like a big parachute. And quite the easiest way to do that is to use your hands. Because not many of us have a thing like a yoga belt or a band or anything like that to put around our ribs to feel it. But you can just put your hands around your ribs like that and breathe into your hands. So you notice the ribs expanding as you breathe. Allow the ribs to move as you breathe. And some of us, our ribs are very stuck, which means that the organs underneath them can be very stuck as well. There's no movement and flow within the system, and which means you can get very stagnant in the blood flow and the lymph flow. It becomes very, and that can affect our skin, it can affect our mood, it can affect how we move, it can affect our joints, and can affect our gut health, can affect a lot of things. So a very simple method and way to work on your breathing is to expand the rib cage and use your hands. We can cross the hands over like that to touch the hands, to touch the ribs, and breathe into your hands. So for me, it's very close to being the first principle, breathing. So even though breathing is the second video, it's kind of a 1.1 for me. So it's a very difficult one to master as well, because you're focusing and concentrating on what move you're trying to do next, that you'll be holding your breath. So mastering the breath can take time in Pilates, and some people, we don't have the patience because everything we expect it to happen now. We want it now. Like, you can just go on the internet and order it and have it now. We expect to be understanding all the principles and all the moves and do it now. So we can lose patience with it, and that's why the practice, sometimes some people don't want to keep going with the practice because they don't have the patience. So the repetition of the movement, repetition of the breath, repetition of awareness builds up a stronger practice, and still until you become a master at it. You can just be very well practiced. So noticing the breath